Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something pretty fascinating, Paul's first missionary journey.
Yeah, and we've got this religious education lesson plan as our guide, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty wild ride. More than just sandals and dusty roads. You know what I mean?
Oh
This
yeah,
is this is about like going through different perspectives and like unexpected challenges and like even some serious communication hurdles.
yeah,
It's pretty cool.
it is.
So the source material kind of sets the stage, right? We've got Paul, newly converted. He's all fired up. He wants to spread the word, but
Yeah,
he kind of learns pretty quickly that you can't just, preach the same message everywhere you go.
right.
And he bumps into all these people who have just totally different ways of seeing the world, you know? So
Absolutely.
our lesson plan here calls worldviews, and those worldviews like totally change how people even understand what he's trying to say. Yeah, I think it's so interesting how relevant that concept of worldview is. Even all these years later. I mean, think about it. Like this, we all wear these sort of metaphorical tinted glasses that color how we see the world. And the tints come from our upbringing, our culture, our experiences, all kinds of things.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
The tinted glasses, it really drives home the point that we don't all see things the same way. And honestly, I've definitely had conversations that went totally off the rails because I was just missing that worldview piece. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like you're speaking different languages almost.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah, Paul's journey is actually, it's kind of a masterclass in navigating those communication gaps. He starts out in Antioch, which is this really diverse city with a mix of Jewish and Gentile influences. And from there, his journey takes him to some pretty incredible places.
Okay, so where are we talking? Give us some names.
Well, we're talking about Syrian Antioch and Seleucia, Salamis, Paphos.
Wow. Just those names alone sound like an adventure.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
They do.
sign me up. I'm there.
Totally.
But the lesson plan doesn't just list these locations, right? It actually digs into the specific worldview challenges that Paul faced in each spot. So for example, in Paphos, he runs into this guy, Elymas, who is a magician. He's described as a faith distractor,
Interesting.
which makes you kind of wonder what would make someone so vehemently opposed to what Paul was saying.
That is a good question. I find Elymas to be such a fascinating character. And his opposition to Paul could have been rooted in fear. Maybe Paul's message was somehow threatening his livelihood or his position. Or, maybe Elymas just genuinely believed his own worldview was superior and he saw Paul as this dangerous outsider.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not always about malice, right?
No, not at all.
Sometimes it's about just genuinely holding different beliefs and feeling threatened by something new.
Exactly. And that's what makes Paul's approach so remarkable. He seems to really understand that he needs to tailor his message to each audience, taking their worldview into account.
So how does he do that? What are some specific examples of Paul, adapting his communication style?
Well, let's look at Lystra, for example. The people there were polytheistic, meaning that they believed in many gods, which is, quite different from the single God that Paul was preaching. In fact, after Paul performs a miracle, the Lystrans actually mistake him and his companion Barnabas for Zeus and Hermes.
Wait, they thought they were Greek gods?
Yeah.
That's a pretty major worldview clash.
It certainly is. It shows just how deeply their existing beliefs shape their interpretation of events. But instead of just dismissing their worldview, Paul actually uses it as a starting point. He starts by focusing on this concept of a single, all-powerful God, something that they could at least grasp within their existing framework.
So he's not trying to just shove his message down their throats. He's meeting them where they're at, building on what they already understand.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's really insightful. And it shows this level of respect and understanding that is just crucial for effective communication, especially across different cultures and belief systems.
It makes you wonder if he had a little cheat sheet.
Yeah.
If he was okay, if you meet this type of person, you say this.
Yeah, like a little.
If you meet this type of person, you say this. But yeah.
Totally.
But even with his best efforts, things don't always go smoothly for Paul, do they?
No, they don't.
The lesson plan mentions that he faced some opposition in Lystra, possibly fueled by rumors spread by Jewish people from other towns. It's a reminder that even the most skilled communicator can't always overcome, deep-seated prejudices or fears.
That's true. And it makes you think about what were some of those key factors that contributed to Paul's successes and failures? What can we learn from his approach, both the good and the bad?
That's a fantastic question, and one that I think we should definitely explore further. But for now, let's just take a moment to absorb what we've learned so far. Paul's journey is a powerful reminder that understanding different worldviews is crucial, not just for religious history, but for effective communication in like every aspect of life.
I think that's a great point to end on for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we're kind of going deeper into this lesson plan about Paul's journey, it really strikes me that he was dealing with like the same kind of communication challenges that we still grapple with today.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's incredible how timeless these issues are. Paul wasn't just like hopping between cities. He was navigating this complex web of cultural and religious differences. And like every stop on his journey presented unique obstacles and opportunities.
Yeah, it's like he was constantly code switching, right? Trying to find the right language and the right approach for each audience he was speaking to.
Exactly. And one of the things that really stands out to me is Paul's use of storytelling. The lesson plan highlights how he would draw upon these familiar narratives and local knowledge to connect with the people he was addressing.
So instead of just like laying down these abstract theological concepts, he made it relatable. He found ways to like weave his message into their existing cultural fabric.
Exactly. He met them on their own turf, so to speak. For instance, when speaking to Jewish audiences, he often emphasized the continuity between their traditions and the message of Jesus.
That makes sense. It's like he's saying, hey, this isn't something totally foreign. It builds on what you already know and believe.
Right. But in other cases, he focused on the universality of God's love and grace, appealing to a broader human experience that transcended specific cultural boundaries.
It's fascinating how he tailored his approach to each situation.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's no one-size-fits-all method for effective communication.
And this is where the importance of understanding worldviews comes into play again. Paul's journey underscores the need to recognize those different lenses through which people see the world. And if we can understand those perspectives, we can better tailor our communication and actually find common ground, even amidst so much diversity.
Speaking of tailoring the message, I'm curious about the discipleship aspect that the lesson plan mentions. It seems like Paul wasn't just interested in delivering like a one-time message. He was really invested in building these lasting communities.
Oh, absolutely. Paul understood that lasting change requires more than just initial conversion. He really prioritized nurturing relationships, establishing local communities, and appointing leaders to carry on the work.
It's like he was playing the long game, right? He wasn't just dropping seeds. He was cultivating the soil and making sure that those seeds had a chance to take root.
That's a great analogy. He recognized that sustainable growth requires ongoing support and guidance. And this speaks to another important lesson we can glean from Paul's approach, the value of patience and persistence. He faced opposition setbacks, even violence, but he never gave up.
Yeah, it's so easy to get discouraged when we encounter resistance. But Paul's journey is like this reminder that meaningful change often takes time and unwavering commitment.
It's also a reminder that effective communication isn't always about winning arguments or forcing our views on others. It's about building bridges, fostering understanding, and creating space for dialogue.
And sometimes it's about knowing when to walk away, right? The lesson plan mentions that Paul eventually left Lystra after facing persecution. There are times when, despite our best efforts, we need to recognize that not everyone is receptive to our message.
That's a difficult but important lesson. Discernment is key. We need to know when to press forward and when to step back, trusting that the seeds we've planted will eventually bear fruit.
Yeah, this whole discussion has really got me thinking about my own communication style. Do I truly listen to understand other perspectives? Am I willing to adapt my approach to connect with different audiences?
Those are excellent questions to consider. Paul's journey offers a wealth of insights that we can all apply in our daily lives, regardless of our beliefs or professions.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing those tinted glasses we all wear, both our own and those of the people we interact with.
It's about moving beyond surface-level judgments and seeking a deeper understanding of where others are coming from.
It's about having the courage to engage in meaningful dialogue, even when it's challenging or uncomfortable.
And ultimately, it's about building bridges of empathy and connection in a world that often feels increasingly divided.
This deep dive into Paul's journey has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's clear that he wasn't just a historical figure. He was a master communicator whose lessons are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
I completely agree. His journey is a timeless testament to the power of understanding adaptability and a genuine commitment to connecting with others across those differences.
But before we wrap things up, there's one more aspect of Paul's journey. I want to touch on this concept of faith distractors. The lesson plan brought this up in relation to Leamus, but it's something that can manifest in many different forms.
That's a great point. Faith distractors aren't always individuals. They can be ideologies, cultural trends, even our own internal biases.
Hmm.
Anything that pulls us away from authentic connection and genuine understanding can act as a distraction.
So how do we identify and navigate these faith distractors? Are there any strategies we can take from Paul's experience?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is Paul's willingness to engage in dialogue, even with those who opposed him. He didn't shy away from difficult conversations.
He didn't just preach to the choir. He stepped into the lion's den, so to speak.
Exactly. And while we don't need to seek out conflict, we can learn from Paul's courage to address opposing viewpoints head-on. By engaging in respectful dialogue, we can challenge our own assumptions and potentially find common ground.
But I imagine there were also times when Paul had to walk away, right?
Oh,
To recognize that some people simply weren't ready to hear his message.
Absolutely. Discernment is crucial. We need to be wise about choosing our battles. Sometimes the best way to counter a faith distractor is to just focus our energy on building positive connections and strengthening the communities that support us.
This is all so insightful. It feels like Paul's journey is like a master class in communication leadership and navigating the complexities of human interaction. I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on this as we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Well, for me, Paul's journey is a powerful reminder that true connection requires more than just words. It requires empathy, adaptability, and a willingness to meet people where they are at, both physically and metaphorically.
It's about recognizing that we all have these different tinted glasses shaping our perceptions, and that understanding those perspectives is crucial for building bridges of understanding and fostering meaningful relationships.
It's about embracing the messiness of human interaction, the challenges and the triumphs, and trusting that even small acts of connection can have this ripple effect.
This has been an incredible exploration so far. But before we reach our final destination, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've learned from Paul's incredible journey. We'll be back soon to wrap things up and uncover those final gems of wisdom. Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of wrap up our deep dive into Paul's first missionary journey. And I got to say, this lesson plan has really opened my eyes to the power of understanding different worldviews. It's not just some academic concept. It's something that's happening in our interactions every single day.
Yeah. What really strikes me is how Paul's journey wasn't just about spreading this message. It was about building bridges between these vastly different cultures and belief systems. He encountered so much resistance, yet he persisted and constantly adapting and refining his approach.
He was a master of intercultural communication, way ahead of his time.
Eh.
And it makes me think about how often we approach conversations with the assumption that everyone sees the world the same way we do.
Yeah, that's such a common pitfall, isn't it? We forget that our own experiences and our own upbringing have shaped our perceptions and created those tinted glasses we were talking about earlier. And, when we encounter someone with a different set of tints, it can lead to misunderstandings, frustrations, even conflict.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit square pegs into round holes. We need to recognize those differences and find ways to connect even when it feels hard.
And I think Paul's journey offers some really valuable insights into how we can do that. His willingness to meet people where they were at intellectually and culturally is such a powerful example for all of us. It requires humility, open-mindedness, and a genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that there's always something to learn from those who see the world differently than we do.
Absolutely. And it's about being willing to step outside of our comfort zones and engage in those sometimes difficult conversations, even when we know there's a risk of disagreement or discomfort.
So it's about building bridges instead of walls.
Okay.
Right, and I think that's something we could all use a little more of these days.
I couldn't agree more. Paul's journey is this timeless reminder that true connection requires more than just shared beliefs or opinions. It requires empathy, compassion, and a willingness to embrace that beautiful tapestry of human diversity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question. How can you apply the lessons of Paul's journey to your own life? What tinted glasses are you wearing? And how can you start to see the world through the lenses of others?
Maybe you can challenge yourself to engage in a conversation with someone who holds a different viewpoint than your own. Or maybe you can simply make an effort to listen more deeply and seek to understand before jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, and remember, this isn't about changing who you are or abandoning your own beliefs. It's about expanding your perspective and recognizing the inherent value in diverse ways of seeing the world.
It's about building those bridges of understanding and connection, one conversation at a time.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our journey today. I hope you found this deep dive into Paul's first missionary journey as enlightening as I have. It's been a powerful reminder that the world is full of fascinating perspectives, and that by embracing those differences, we can create a richer, more compassionate, and more interconnected world.